Welcome, everybody, to Conversations in American Democracy, and it's good to see you all. We started before last week's guest to look at the U.S. Constitution. We looked at the fact that what the legislative branch does, and it's the one that makes the laws. Don't tell Donald Trump that he thinks he makes laws through executive orders. That's not the case. And then we talked about the House of Representatives. We have Randy Fine. Every 2 years they get elected. Section 3 of Article 1. The legislative branches in Article 1. The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, chosen by the legislature thereof, and then it's since changed, for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. Immediately after they shall be assembled, in consequence of the first election, they'll be divided equally so that 1/3, I'm going to paraphrase here, 1/3 of the Senate is elected every 2 years. And so we just finished our election, and we have some time yet before we see a senatorial election once again. So we're aware of that. We're going to talk about executive orders, but let's table that for a moment and talk about what's going on with the Palm Coast City Council. For that, we have the web man, Mark Webb.
No. Can I have that back?
Mark, what's the latest from the Palm Coast City Council?
Very fluid, and we're all rolling upstream with little chance of transition. So a wise man recently told me just the other night, you can't fix what's broken. Our city council has its own agenda, and it is a complete waste of time to show up for 3 minutes of venting because the city council will not react to issues, concerns that go against their agenda. So you can, and I'm sure Jim can opine on what's going on with the addition of a sheriff into our city council, but they approved 2 more cell towers when a plethora of people came up and said, we don't want it in our neighborhood. I'm not pro or against cell towers, but they had already cleared the property and started building the pad around Fire Station 22, the new one, which is where one of the towers is going to go, before they ever approved and did the final reading of the cell tower. So that is the message. That is, as citizens, we need to be aware of. They talked at length about the impact fees, which they want to double. We all think that's a good thing. That is. I mean, we need to generate these issues. But they failed to tell you the impact fees are only started once the slab gets poured. So you may have a 8-acre, 10, 12-acre cleared lot with some power on it and some roads on it, and until the developer feels that the price will be right to build those homes, they're not gonna. 7% interest. Our economy's down in the state, in the city, so they're gonna sit on it. No money to us. So I sat through the entire thing last night. I had quite a few comments about various things, fell on deaf ears. I mean, even our own mayor was shocked and had just learned the day previous that the acting city manager had started and had made an offer to the chief of staff sheriff, Jim, what's his name? Mark Stoverich, to come in for an extended period of time to help us.
Help us do what?
Well, her response when asked by Teresa, the vice mayor, was that she's wanting to put together a Doge team internally to go through and start to do evaluation audits and assessments. And she doesn't have time for that, so she's going to ask this guy to do that. I know.
Who's saying that,
Was that an editor?
do we have to vote on whether or not this guy?
Well, first of all, there was no need for a vote. The charter allows the city manager to hire contracted personnel. They brought it to the council because it had been leaked prematurely. And again, this is what Pierre was telling me, because I reached out to him, was he had been informed that this was going on, wrote an article a day or two ago, because this has been going on for a week, and announced it, and that forced, I believe, the city council to bring it out, make it transparent, and do a vote. That very question was asked by several council members last night. Why are we even bothering? Well, they're bothering because there is a law on the books that says an individual that is subject to contracts and is an official that works for a government, state, city, sheriff organization can't be contracted by another organization. So anyway, we are now this month starting to get into the budgetary actions for the new and upcoming budget. I called the city out last night saying that the report had already mentioned that the contract rough numbers for the 2025-2026 sheriff contract for services they're going to render to us, have not been able to verify what those are, was going to go from 8.9 million to over 11 million, which was put out by Pierre on Flagler Live. Haven't confirmed that yet. So I think, and I believe like others, and this kind of piggybacks to what the people talking about the PAC last meeting, was that the only way to successfully change the direction of this city is by the involvement, participation, and efforts of those that don't like that direction. And it's not partisan. It's not Republican. It's not Democrat. It's all of us that see our water going up, see our property taxes possibly going up, see our roads and all of these things. And that is the challenge I feel we face in trying to find here in our county to run for one of the 3 seats, maybe 4 if the mayor resigns. Who knows what's going to happen on that area. That is a middle of the road, not Republican, not Democrat, but is going to look at financial and issues that we all have. And that's a challenge. It's a challenge for me. I would have a hard time voting for Teresa Ponateri, even though she's kind of a middle of the road person, but she's very inconsistent, and she is a Republican. Clearly a Republican. So,
Jim, you want,
yeah.
No, I'm sorry.
No, I'm done. So that's my report of the city, and I've decided I'm stepping back from attending the meetings at this point, unless something really wacky happens. Because,
Every day.
yeah, but I meant really, really crazy happens. So,
Okay.
but Jim?
yeah, I have a mind game for you after Jim. Go ahead.
I do have to leave in about 20 minutes, but I wanted to check in. I agree with, by the way, hey Lonnie, haven't seen you all. I do agree with Mark. I really want to take your temperature on what you heard last week, because I really do believe we have to be relevant. And the only way we're going to be relevant is joining with groups. And I have come to know Greg and Kelly over some period of time, and I just had a discussion with them today, and they are looking to put forward candidates, Democrat, Independent, or Republican, who are the best for our community. And I'm probably talking a little bit out of school, but they've tried to run this past the Republican Party, and they said, that's not what we're about. We're not about getting best candidates, only putting Republicans in their office, which is no surprise to any of us, right? But I do want to give you some context of this thing with Stowbridge, because I feel like, Mark, you just want to throw your hands up. It is an acknowledgement, in my opinion, that Lauren, who's a good kid, cannot handle her job. And she can, and she's admitted that this is not. And the ability of the board to find a good candidate, because it's so dysfunctional, to find a good manager, is really what all our problems are. All the things we're discussing cannot be done unless the city manager goes forward. The irony of bringing the sheriff's office in is, just so you know, because these are the facts, when I left the sheriff's office, the budget was $24 million. It is now $52 million. That's just in 6 years? 8 years. Crime has not gone up, places gotten older. Most of that money has not gone for more people on the street. It's gone for more supervisors paying higher salaries. When I left, there was only one person making over $100,000. That was me, because it's statutory. Staley used to scream that I wouldn't give more money than $99,000 because I wanted to keep the people below him. You know, now everyone's making $120,000. So he is the last person you want to put in charge of the Doge, because he has more than doubled the budget. And when it comes to the city, when I left, there was $3.5 million we took from the city. Now it's going to be $11 million. There isn't that much more crime. The traffic, yes, is a little bit more, but they don't seem to do a lot of traffic. I don't see them at all doing that kind of stuff. So we're getting to the point where, and let me just be very clear about this. When the city decided to contract with the sheriff's office, I had that conversation with the original city manager, and my point was, you don't have to pay me anything. City of Palm Coast are already paying me. So what you're paying now is an addition. So everyone in the county pays their taxes, right, and gets a level of service. Everyone in the city is paying taxes. And by the way, we pay higher taxes because our values, taxable values, are higher than almost any other place but, you know, the ocean fronts. I don't believe we should be paying another penny to the sheriff's office. And if we just said, you know what, we're not paying you, there's a court decision, he would still have to provide service. So we're being double taxed for all that money, whether it was $3 million. And the original city manager's point was that he wanted to incur costs in case it ever got to the point where the sheriff's office was not providing the level of services and they could create their own department. We're getting close to that number. The number is about $20 million to, it's probably a little more now, to start a police department, which I don't agree with. It would be vastly expensive for the city to do that. But the other thing we don't talk about is that he also, Mr. Fiscal Management, walked out of a building that cost the county $14 million that was still paying today. In 2012, they took out a 30-year note to pay for the building. So that 30-year note is not paid until 2042. So we're still paying on that building. They left the building because he said there was some mold. I was in that building for 2 years. No one got sick. Yes, some people are more susceptible to mold. Well, if there's mold in your house, you're mediated. He left the building. They sold it for $750,000. That person sold it for $3.5 million. The person that's in there now, my wife spoke to personally because he had some extra space he wanted to lease. And she said, is there anything wrong with the building? Because I had a complete environmental. I would never spend $3.5 million. And by the way, I'm a contractor. I know this. So there's nothing wrong with the building. So it cost us $14 million. It continued to cost us. And then we spent $26 million. So Mr. Fiscal Management has cost us $40 million, plus an additional $30 million to our budget, plus another $8 million to the city. So this is the person they put in charge of reducing costs, which I think is a noble idea. I think every organization should always be looking to be as efficient as possible. But this is putting the fox in, to guard the hen house. And there is no, Staley thinks he runs the place, and he probably does because he fashions himself as a Marlboro man. And that's what you're fighting. And until you get candidates, as Mark said, who are going to stand up to him and stand up to this foolishness that we have in our city council, that it just they can't find a city manager because no one in their right mind would want to work for such a dysfunctional group. In the meantime, you have Dennis McDonald, I just spoke to, who believes that he is going to take Charlie Gabarro out and also take out Dave Sullivan. Because Ray Stevens, which is good news, I like Ray, Ray's a good guy. Ray is apparently recovered, which is really good news to hear. The last time we heard was he was on death's door, and he is now recovered, so that's the good news. So my point in coming, and the point I think in you asking me, is how do we have some influence on this process? And I strongly urge you, and to be honest with you, I think the conversation with Jan Sullivan has to be had. How do we maximize our leverage? And we do have it. Do not feel any day that we are without power. Our share of the vote can change elections in primaries, in bipartisan elections, with the school board or the city council. Not as much in county races, obviously, because they're partisan races. So I hope you consider, stay strong. Mark, I hate to hear you're not going, because you're the only person I look forward to hearing reasonable comments when I watch, and hang in there. And I'm always a resource if you need me. I'm always a phone call away. I've agreed to do Mark's podcast, but if you ever need background, Arnie's another great resource. We've been fighting this battle for 26 years, Arnie, and it doesn't seem ever to get better. It seems getting worse, because I think the Republican Party's gotten worse.
Comments, questions? So it has been suggested that finding the right people to run for office is only dealing with a symptom, that there's an underlying pathology, and that is that the system filters out the good people. Anybody with any sense would want to stay out of politics in this community, I believe, and you're welcome to challenge and dispute that. Can that be changed?
I completely disagree with you now. There was so
Okay.
many, I'll give you myself an example. I never wanted to run. When I moved here, it was to do something completely different. I had spent 20 years of my life in law enforcement. I had enough. I came here to make a few dollars to pay for, college education. There are people like me who will step up under the right circumstances.
How about you?
Yeah, and what about those? What are those circumstances? Yeah,
Well,
how
How about you?
Yeah.
Well, I think the circumstances have to be electable. First of all, there's got to be a path forward. It's, and I'll speak for my wife, who has run, 3 times, who's a much better candidate than I, by the way.
Voted for him.
And thank you. You have to have a path forward, to win. To just run and get your butt kicked each time, it takes the heart out of you. If we can provide, in this instance, a foundation of money, because let's face it, Democrats don't have as much money as Republicans do. And what this group is trying to do is tap into frustrated Republicans, independents, and Democrats to build a base. So if you can create an organization where you can get Democrats, disaffected Republicans, and independents, and provide them enough money to run, then I think you can find candidates who will step up and say, okay, I have a reasonable chance. If you don't have a reasonable chance, why would you run for anything? If people ask me, why don't you want to get state? Can't beat him. He's got tons of money, and, he is tapped into, the most ardent group, and, I'm not just going to run just to run. So if there was a chance that he was weakened, and I had an opportunity to go back in and fix the place, even the third time would be a huge lift, because it's going to be hard to undo a lot of things that he's done, because you basically have to wipe out his whole command staff who are making all this ridiculous amount of salaries and push that money down to the guys at the bottom to create more people on the street. So I'm not prepared to do that, but I believe, Merrill, there are lots of people given the right circumstance, and that's the thing that Kelly and Greg have talked about, is how do we find those people? If we make the conditions, the best, we're going to provide you support, we're going to provide you mentorship, they have great marketing skills, we're going to provide you the money, and then I think you'll find good people, and it'll be incumbent upon all of us to find those people.
If we want to go out and raise money for Jolly and Josh Wheel, okay, but they're a Republican organization, and we give them the money, who's to say that money is going to go to Jolly and Josh Wheel.
I mean, for this local group, this group is
Flagler
is
only.
Flagler only. We're dealing with just Flagler. I
And
mean, John, sorry.
if I found the right website, it says right on it, for conservatives. Like
That is
they're
correct.
backing, like they wouldn't take our money and back Josh Wheel or David Jolly, right?
Even if
Because
you're
it says
running
from
for school board.
conservatives.
I don't think they're not looking at from what I understand, they're not looking at those races. There's so much money involved in congressional races. You're talking about millions and millions of dollars. And when you're talking about statewide races, you're talking about tens and, maybe $100 million. But, $400,000 or $500,000 in local races can make a huge impact. I mean, most people, raise, I think I've ever raised more than $50,000.
Okay,
when I
Jim
ran.
Stockton has run, he's a Democrat. If we raise money for Jim Stockton, who I heard is thinking about running again, would that money go to Jim Stockton, or would money go to who they
This
decide?
group,
That group would put it towards who they want,
So,
they would put it towards,
who
Right.
they want.
yeah,
So-
again, they're local candidates, not
Right. So
not
Kathy.
federal
Yeah.
candidates.
the group that we talked to yesterday, and I followed up and talked to them extensively afterwards, is focused on Palm Coast.
So Cornelia-
Primarily, which is a nonpartisan
Right.
race. It's become heavily partisan. We all know that we're sitting in this room going, I'm looking for a Democrat to run for city council. And their communication, and I'm not supporting, they are saying they're looking for a candidate that wants what we want. Growth in industry, lower taxes, organization, city council, all the things we all want. And I was singing Vicky's praises with her efforts with Belvedere because it was nonpartisan.
Partisan.
There were Republicans and Democrats standing in that county area, the county commission, all complaining about the same thing. And that's really what the group that Jim is talking about, that PAC, is focused on. They're not focused on,
I don't wanna give money to any group that's gonna back Danko. I don't care what they're doing, okay?
Well-
But if Cornelia Manfrey is running, I wanna make sure I give money to that and
course.
that girl that,
and that is your
Yeah.
choice.
I
right.
have two comments to make about what you just said, and hopefully I remember them. One of them is, I am seeing movement. I'm in a private group that deals with the fuel farm hazardous waste issue. And people are in that group locally that are conservatives. And I see them come onto the page, this private page, and say, oh, so-and-so said that we should seek out Adam Morley because he cares about the environment. And then there's me chiming in and saying, Adam Morley is great, and I voted for him, and we could have had him, and now you want to find him, and now you want to beg him to help you, and you could have had him. And so they're learning, and I said in that group, I said, need to stop just voting for people because they have an R beside their name. You really need to think about what's happening when you're going to these city meetings and you're speaking your heart out and they're not listening to you, they're only listening to the lawyer. So really think about who you're voting for moving forward. So I'm seeing those conversations happen behind the scenes. So that's one
Yes.
thing. There's movement happening because of issues. And we really need to tap into the issues that we all care about, like the water bill and like now they're scrambling to know who Adam Morley is. And I also was feeling, I'm a speak up kind of person, and last week our guests here were saying something at your end of the table and I was at this end. They were saying that they feel like the Belvedere thing, the fuel farm thing and whatnot is
It's a done
dead.
deal.
They made a comment that it was dead. I didn't speak up, and it is not dead. People in Vanell are very concerned. There's meetings coming up that they want all of us to go to. There are 2 events happening this weekend locally, the same day. A Vanell History event is happening, and the Flagler Pride Festival is happening. And at both events, there's going to be paperwork given out to the community to make the community aware that the Vanell Zoning Board have already approved rezoning for Vanell. And now it's going to the city. So now people are going to go speak up and talk to the city from their hearts. And apparently locals are looking into a lawyer. And so there was a lawyer for the hazardous fuel side, and now, you know, there's a lot happening on the other side too, but people in the community like us are speaking out at these two festivals and making people more aware. For so those two people to sit here and say that it's dead was wrong information.
Opinion.
Thank you.
It sounded to me like he was giving his opinion about it,
Opinion.
and it masquerades, depending on who it comes from, opinion masquerades as if it's fact.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we
And
need
you
to be
have to
telling the
be
truth.
really, really careful with that stuff,
That's right.
especially if you have any authority in the community.
So I didn't appreciate that.
If we
A
tell,
candidate who speaks with authority, someone who doesn't have a problem getting up on the table, standing up on the table and saying, this is what I'm going to do. And someone who's attractive, because we live in a populist,
You're right.
political society. People look at the person.
Charm.
What's attractive?
They want charm.
What's
Yeah.
attractive?
Oprah Winfrey could probably win the
Charisma,
presidency.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
I know, I love David Jolly because he just has
Yeah.
like
We have to
something
get
about him,
someone, not
you
an
know, he has
old
that
man,
charm.
an old man or an old lady. We have to get somebody that has a.
They don't want a
an
Clinton.
appearance.
Yeah.
They don't want a Martha Stewart. They don't want that type of a person. They want
So-
somebody who's, like you said.
Yeah.
And someone who's willing to,
Yeah.
I'm gonna repeat myself, stand up on the table and say, listen, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm not gonna stand down to it.
My
If
husband,
we, if we raise money,
Kathy, then we'll get it
is
done.
there, how come, if we raise money, are we gonna get into trouble legally if we raise money for a candidate?
I don't think so.
we're
Well,
not a PAC yet.
yeah.
so
By
Yeah.
the way, if we're not a
getting
PAC,
all
we have
this
to.
information.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can't,
yeah.
you can pay, you individually, you can support who you want to. You can't, as a group, support anyone without forming a political committee.
Committee,
So
okay.
individually, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Go down, and
My
again,
husband has-
and, right, $1,000 would have
What
made.
constitutes a group? If you and I decide to
Yes. You and your wife can support whoever, I mean, again, to be honest, that's not
you and
a-
I can't?
Not gonna be a PAC. Get done.
My husband, as most of you know, ran for 3rd District last year and lost by 2 votes. And we spent a sum total of $1,500. And so I call that a pretty darn successful, cheap campaign to run for local office. And so then Ray Stevens beat him out, and my husband worked with him to beat out
Andy,
Andrew
Weiner.
Warner, because he was in fact a hardcore Republican and did not want what everybody in this city wants. He was, you know, in the builder's pockets, period. And so just to say that my husband's heart was in the right place, still is, but I'm not sure whether he wants to do it again.
But if a PAC, not us, but if there were a PAC that had $3,000 that the day he declared, we could turn over to him, would that change his mind?
I don't know.
Oh,
You know, we
okay.
should talk to him if you're interested in talking to
I
him.
mean, that's the goal, the idea behind raising the money, and I
We
believe,
also
I believe around this table, the PAC idea is dead, but nonetheless, theoretically, if we were to have money to give to candidates, it would encourage good candidates to run.
Possibly.
I think
And you also have to keep in mind that individual donators can only donate up to $1,000.
Yeah. Yeah, but a PAC, by the way, can spend unlimited amount of money on behalf of a candidate. So we could buy 1,000 signs for
Send
March
out
Stand Sell,
flyers.
to say, that at the bottom say, paid for by Conversations in American Democracy PAC, for
We
example.
were getting fines, flyers every day.
Yeah.
And I could see how he won.
You have to do other, by the way, because you need to go back and look at the reports, every candidate has online financial reports that they must file on a regular basis. When Fine began, he began with $100,000, and again, by the way, and his campaign treasurer was on Monroe Street in Tallahassee, and the Republican Party has greased the rails. The problem, I believe, is that the Democratic Party, both on a statewide perhaps even national, but certainly local, has not greased the rails. And that's what money might do.
Well, part of the problem is that, the state, one of the big things we need to do is replace, the government. Because then all the money flows into Democratic PACs, right? Right now, all the money's flowing into Republican PACs because they have the governorship and they have all the legislature. So that's what you're always fighting, whether it's Adam or Josh. You're fighting against these PACs out of Tallahassee. So even on local races, there was a PAC that was formed locally, and they attached themselves to a Tallahassee group. And that money was focused on certain local candidates here. So that's what you're fighting with. So that's why, they have, bazookas and we have slingshots.
Yeah.
So unless we, whatever.
So we need David, right?
That's
So-
right.
I mean, David's
Reign
gonna
of
have.
king.
I mean, David has, again, the governor's race is completely different than local races. He's gonna attract federal money as well. If they poll, and by the way, that's how everything works with these PACs. They don't just give you money. They poll, and if you're, have a chance of winning, then they send money to you. Having run for Congress, that's what happens. When I was polling really well, I got lots of money. And the polling started changing, and the money dries up. So if David proves himself to be a credible candidate, or Adam for that matter, proves himself to be a credible candidate, or because Fine is sort of falling apart, even the Republicans are attacking him, if we get a Stockton and he polls better, then you'll see federal money flowing in. If we're not within the margin, within 5 or 6%, they're not coming here. They'll go to the races that they feel, are winnable. Governorships as well as, you don't have any presidential races, but you have congressional and, governors races, which we're now realizing are really important because of what? Gerrymandering. Governors have control over, districts. And so the Democrats have finally woken up to the fact that we need to get more governors. At one point we had 60% of governors, now we have 40%. And they've gerrymandered those districts to make, it easier for them.
You haven't had a good goddamn governor since I moved to this stupid state. Okay?
I'm sorry?
You haven't had a good governor here since I moved to this state, and I've been here 18 years.
I'm with you.
There was, Graham Askew, but that's a long time ago.
I'm gonna have to.
So let me-
I'm all, whenever you
you.
need me back, please.
Thank you for,
Thank
you're
you.
always,
Thank
you're always
you for
welcome.
stopping back.
We're here every not Tuesday, we're here every Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Thank
We're here every
you.
Wednesday.
Thank you for doing this.
At
It gives me
midnight.
hope.
It's a pleasure, thank you for being here.
Was your
So-
ears burning?
Yes, I-
Because
yes.
I almost put your name out at the,
Thanks.
City council?
in lieu
Except
of,
once a month.
I said, there's plenty of contracted.
Yeah, once a
people
month
available. Anyway,
yeah,
I'll let you know.
we'll let them know.
Yeah,
I'll let
give
them
me
know.
some
I'm-
Yeah, give me some
yeah.
time for it.
So a mind game for you and for you, and that is, suppose theoretically and very hypothetically, suppose 100 people showed up at a city council meeting and each took 3 minutes, which by the way
No,
equals
they,
5.
max is 30 minutes, they total they
They
can
have
speak.
lots
So
of-
it's
Have they
only
blocked,
10
have they
people.
stopped?
On the
Oh,
front
that's-
end.
Yeah, that's, I don't think that
But
comports
we could
well
all
with
rush
state law.
up and be the 10.
Yeah,
But-
so suppose they were overwhelmed by people who spoke of it. Is there a number of speakers that would make a difference?
In
Or you
what?
think, because you say they don't listen.
No, they aren't gonna listen because
they're
the
not gonna-
other
no matter
side
how
brought a
the-
lawyer. They
no
brought
matter
a
how
lawyer,
the-
and then, you know what they did?
Well, that's on the Belvedere issue. I'm talking about
Oh,
other issues
yeah.
and all issues in general.
They might.
So I just wonder if there's a number of commenters and a number of people who write letters, a number of people who write letters to the editor that appear in both Flagler Live and the Observer, whether that would make a difference. When you say that the elected officials won't pay attention to us, I wonder if there are buttons to press that we
What we
can't get
need
them
is
to pay
earth
attention.
movers to, line up.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
the road.
We did that with Belvedere with the city. And we did go to the city meetings and we all would rush up and say, and we've got compliments on that actually.
Yeah.
And we had a group of us that were doing that. And at one of the meetings, one of the gentlemen, and I forget his name, you probably know right who he is. But yeah, he spoke up and he said, I've gotten all of your emails, gotten all of your phone calls. They were trying to say, they knew, they were bombarded by people in our groups. So they saw that But I don't know if it really did make a difference. Like, I feel like the government had a plan B behind the scenes all the time, knowing that it was gonna be moved to Benel. So they made Norris look good, like the good guy, and they made their team look like they were the good guys, like they were getting it out of Palm Coast, when they really knew
It's gonna be-
they were looking at land in Benel. So we all thought we had a little victory. We really didn't.
Yeah.
Well, I think that message, at least from my experience, and the message I was giving was, I didn't have a problem with the industry itself. I had a problem with the location of the industry,
Mhm.
next to your house and next to
Right.
residential areas.
Right?
I understand the need of a facility like that and
Right.
why the state is trying to, the location is tricky, and that is the.
Yeah, the location they're looking at now is still tricky because it butts
I'm
up
sure it
against
is.
new
Well,
houses.
it
So
needs-
Exactly.
needs to be-
exactly, move
needs
it
to be on
out
the ra-
5 miles.
Needs to be on the rail line. Though,
Oh, yeah.
as the-
Move it out 5 miles, and they're not. They're looking at, and one of the people that owns that land is on the board.
Right.
Others
Well,
are-
yeah.
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 It's just
Yeah.
disgusting.
If they moved it out 5 miles, they would get a lot less opposition.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
but the conversation, you started, we started, and we were heard. And I used that as an example of organization and motivation for issues that are happening.
Yes,
Those issues that are happening in the city, like this scenario with this contracted sheriff, we only learned about it accidentally. It wasn't transparent, it wasn't presented to the city as, oh, we're trying to do this, and I wanted to ask Jim, who has a phenomenal memory of the history. I don't think there's ever been a time where Palm Coast has actually done this with a contract.
yeah, and it's
And I
all,
was gonna recommend Jim to it, because and for my part, and I think where we're not doing as well as we could, and I'm gonna shift my focus, is to become louder or more apparent in the media. I know Kurt has talked about writing letters to Flagler Live and to the Observer. I met with the radio station yesterday, 100, and there's like 5 of them over there in Benel, and they're all in cahoots with each other, and they're very conservative, and they do a lot of conservative efforts. And I plan on following up, meeting with them
Good.
to say, hey, you know what? 30 to 40% of the citizens in this county are either liberals or
NPAs.
MBAs, and you're not reaching that. And I want to present to them a possibility of doing I'd love to sit with Perry or sit with someone else and have a dialogue back and forth on what's going on with local stuff to try to get the message out. So standing in front of the council, unless you have a specific issue, is tough, because you're talking to people that don't have like-minded views of what's going on,
right,
unless you make it personal. Where we need to do a lot better, we're doing much better with this podcast, with other podcasts, to get into the media, to get people to hear, and flag waving and all of that stuff. But we need to reach out and get our feelings and issues in Flagler Live. Pierre is more than willing. He's fairly left-leaning already. I've talked to Brian over at the Observer. We're trying to get him in on a podcast. He's got a whole space of ready for editorial issues to get these issues that the general public doesn't know.
Chris Gollum
Yeah.
too.
Exactly. So I think that's where one of our focuses now, and it may drive up some candidates
right.
that are on the edge of thinking, you know, maybe I'm thinking Donna and some others we're trying to find candidates now to start to work with and get information. I know that Kathy was talking about maybe.
I've signed up to
Take those classes I
training.
sent
Yeah,
you?
she said 2 different companies.
So the energy and the motivation and the concerns are there. We just need to figure out where to direct it to where we get the best value. And I think that's what the PAC people in our last meeting were really saying. This is what our view is, this is the direction we're going, and we're already way ahead of you, we're organized, and it's not a Republican or a Democratic thing, it's the health and longevity of our city. That's what they are thinking.
But when I looked up their website, if I had the right one, right there on their website, it said for conservatives.
Sure.
So it wasn't,
But-
Yeah.
but
Middle
Vicky-
It wasn't
Road,
as
it
nonpartisan
said-
as they were trying to lead
Right.
us to
Thank
believe.
you,
Yeah,
yeah.
but-
I got that right away from the
Sure.
way they were speaking,
But
yeah, not
Who
nonpartisan.
here's not at some level a conservative? I want my money at the city to go to the right places. I would welcome what was they trying to do, a forensic audit? They were talking about bringing in a DOJ team, which is really nothing more than a group of people that come in and go, monies, I'm for that.
Yeah.
So we need to stop, this is me, and I'm guilty of it, we need to stop labeling ourselves at the local level, at the Palm Coast level, because I'm more concerned about getting someone in that turns around and starts acting completely different, like Sally did on the school board, and trying to do that due diligence than trying to figure out, because I'm telling you, the city of Palm Coast is in trouble. We're 150 some $1 million in debt, about to triple that with the bond for the water.
Right.
We have 5 to 10 positions, leadership positions, that are unfilled,
For
that
a
people
year.
don't want to come here to work. So, that's how I feel, and that's how I'm trying to retool myself and the conversation as to how can we get a better city that is taking care of all of us and is concerned, where we feel proud to say we're in Palm Coast.
Okay,
And we live
let's,
here.
Mike and then Kurt.
Oh, well, I didn't want to go ahead of you, but
You guys decide.
I haven't said anything for the meetings I've been here. And so I just want to kind of ask a question. How many of you folks are on city or county commissions or committees?
I'm on the residential drainage committee, I'm the chairman for that.
Well, my experience in the past, which we haven't talked about, but anyway, one of these days we could, that I always found that we were better working from the inside, and if we got on committees and councils, and I haven't, simply because I've been trying to get the heck out of this city since I got here, and went to the first couple of council meetings when I first got here, and that's true, and I always say the truth. And they were just doing what Mark said, they don't listen. And this was a couple of years ago with some real characters, I thought. And anyway, if we got on the commissions and the committees, we can over time, because I've been able to bring people on when I've done that, and we could possibly influence something down the road.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
But it's not an immediate thing.
Kurt and then
I want to
Kathy.
speak to that.
Kurt, you were right? And then
My
Kathy,
my
then
question
Kathy
is
R.
to you all we hear about is deficits. Deficits everywhere. And what is that saying? Taxes are nowhere near high enough, and they're not taxing the right people. We gotta continue to say it all the time.
And if someone around this table made a suggestion, don't refer to them as taxes, they're patriot fees. Okay, they're patriot fees. Anyway, Kathy, you were.
I want to speak to that point, and that is that they just had the city council overturned the planning board recommendation for the storage facility. Now, why, if you were on that planning committee and you spent all this time and energy going to meetings and volunteering unpaid and this is the recommendation you made based on your experience and based on all your time with the committee, and it goes up front and they say, no, thank you, no. Just like that. No. What did all that time mean and do and so
It
say?
demoralizes everybody.
Yeah.
Donna.
Speaking of the committee, my husband is on the Palm Coast Planning Board, and he was very disgusted about that overturn.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I wanted to mention to you, Mark, is we've got to stop calling ourselves liberals,
Yeah.
because that's a dirty word.
Yeah.
And we need to find a different way to refer to ourselves.
Progressive.
Even if it's progressives, conservative progressives.
Something for sure.
I'm a pro-government.
We should call ourselves proud libertards.
Oh, and the other thing that I want to mention, having been in a lot of the meetings and watched the ones that I weren't in on TV, I have come to believe that the city attorney is right-wing, and he leans that city council in the direction he wants them to go.
Yeah, I don't know, I believe he does not understand what his purpose up there is. And I've said that to him,
Yeah.
that he's there to protect the council and not the citizens. And he did it last night as well.
I believe in the end, what the politicians listen to is the ballot box. And in the end, but unfortunately, their seats are safe because we on the left have just fallen down and done nothing. And that's, I hope that we can coalesce around an idea that we can in fact do something. We need to do, what is it? Don't just stand there, do something. Okay.
I'm not so sure that Gambaro's seat is safe. He was appointed by Alphen and
Right,
Danko
yeah.
and Klufas. And my husband, because he's on the planning board, he has a copy of the charter and he reads it.
Yeah.
And he said that they appointed him illegally because even though the charter says that the city council may appoint somebody, it still said that if they appoint somebody at the next election, that particular person, if they want to keep that job, has to run.
Yeah.
And they appointed him, and I think it was August, and there was a next election in November, and Gambaro did not run.
Right, I think that's the essence of Mike Norris's lawsuit, is
Yeah.
what we're talking about.
But I believe
So-
Charles Gambaro's seat through Kathy Hyder would have been up for reelection in '26 anyway. So
Yeah.
by his appointment, my understanding is, and I could be wrong, was that his appointment was only to complete her seat, and then he would have to run for reelection.
I don't think they have the
Yeah,
right to
and-
do that because it said that very specifically.
Oh, no, I agree with
in
you
the
in how he
charter.
got seated. I'm talking about in 2026.
And it's 14 months away, that's decided at
There's
the
a lot of
at the
damage
primary
in 14
date, not
months.
the November date.
Is there
And
any
so
way to
we've
get
got
him
14
removed?
months.
Can there a recall petition go through, or could we
I
legally threaten it?
I believe
Because that would tie up his money.
You can't recall.
Yeah, I believe
City
interestingly
positions.
that they have these politicians, these local are not
We
subject to
can't
recall.
do it with federal either, so what can?
Some of
No,
them.
you can do some. You can do
But
some.
not with-
But in the end, all the time, effort, energy, and attention that it takes to recall is better devoted to marshaling votes against that person.
And money.
I believe. By the way, okay, read votes as, yes, has a dollar sign in front of it in the end.
Well, I was just thinking,
No,
if the Trump version is to sue everybody and
Yeah.
get their money so tied up that they don't have the energy or the money to go for what they were headed for.
Particularly now when his lawsuits are paid for by us.
Right.
And so, and his always
Don't
made a
forget
point
the
of
Fantas
spending other people's money is the
Yeah.
road to success.
golf trips are
And that's
paid
what these
for by us.
politicians are
Yeah.
doing. By the way, and didn't mention, I wrote an email to the members of the county commission. I got an answer from Heidi Petito that if the Belvedere terminals is to be placed in Bunnell, does that at all come to the county commission? Her answer was she didn't know because it depends on the Bunnell charter. But it may well be that our pressure needs next to turn to the county commissioners,
Yeah.
who themselves stand for election. and let them know that we're gonna work against them if they vote for the Belvedere terminal, because they do not have our community's best interests at heart.
And we've been emailing them, but the next thing that happens is the Vanilla City meeting.
Yeah.
And there's flyers out about it. I can bring some if you'd like to see them. There's 3 meetings listed. There's sign wavings before them. They want the community to go. And there's a lot happening with that we can all be a part of,
Yeah, please do.
whoever's willing to go to the meetings.
At any rate, thank you all for being here. We'll be here until further notice, and it may be that we'll meet here 3 weeks a month and at the library 1 week a month, but they're actually checking on that right now. But in the meantime, please make plans to join us every Wednesday at 12 noon. And guests are always welcome. Yeah, thank you.